Hi everyone, it's Mr. Kennard again. Thank you for joining us for Waves Unit. This is Investigation 2.2, Solving Engineering Challenges. What you just saw in the previous lesson was about tsunamis and waves having energy. Most of us think of energy in waves as water waves and things like that. And a tsunami obviously has a lot of energy built into all of that. And as a result of knowing that waves have energy, designers, constructors, engineers, construction crews, all sorts of stuff have to take all of that into account when they're designing or building any structure that might be impacted by waves. One of the ones that we're going to focus on is of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge disaster back in 1940. That was in Tacoma, Washington, which is kind of up by Seattle. And if you know anything about that, there's lots of islands and water and all that kinds of stuff, so they need some bridges. So back in the 1940s, they built a suspension bridge, and even though it was made of steel and concrete, it still was impacted by wave energy, not from the ocean waves, but from some other force that was imparting energy on the bridge structure. And as a result of it, it failed. It came crashing down into the water, and the bridge was destroyed. So let's take a look at the videos that go along with this to show the bridge. Here's a picture of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, obviously before the disaster. It was built in the 1930s and opened to the public in 1940. You can see by the pictures, this was a big deal to go out and see a bridge opening up, being able to drive your car on it, etc., so on and so forth. But the way it was designed created a problem. And engineers, in fact, when they were even building it, the workers on it called it Galloping Gertie, just because of the wave-like motions that they were experiencing with building it. So they knew right off there were going to be some problems with it. Let me show you these two videos that will take us through what happened with the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, and then we're going to focus on looking at it is an engineering challenge. How do we build a structure that can handle the wave-like energies or the energy from wave-like occurrences and build better structures to withstand those? Here are the two videos.
Dawn of a fatal day, and the wind begins to speak with a roar that no man can fail to hear. In a 40-mile-an-hour gale, the center span weaves like a ribbon in a swinging twist that you wouldn't believe possible unless you could see it as you do now. There's an automobile caught on the heaving roadway. The 11,000-ton center span twists and strains the giant cables that support it. Cables of 6,300 wire strands, each 17 inches thick. Back out of the danger zone, all stricken spectators are driven to safety as the bridge gyrates like a nightmare high above the river, twisting, turning, curling. The lone motorist is forced to abandon the car. He has but a few minutes in which to save himself. Face to face with fate, his destiny hanging in the balance. Will he heed the last warning or perish with the doomed structure? But he saves himself by seconds. No structure of steel and concrete can stand such a strain. Steel girders buckle and giant cables snap like puny thread. There it goes! Engineers are divided as to the cause of the disaster. Some claim it was the use of solid girders. Others differ. But whatever the reason, Tacoma will rebuild. This time a bridge that will not provide a super thrill in the news.
one over the USA's Tacoma Narrows. From the day it was finished in 1940, it bounced around. Dubbed Galloping Gertie, it became a tourist attraction. Real trouble started the day it began to twist. The wind wasn't particularly strong, but it stayed steady. Each time it twisted, it turned a little more. Finally, it twisted itself apart and became every bridge builder's nightmare. For Gimsing, the answer could be seen in the wind tunnel. The problem with the Tacoma Narrows Bridge was its sharp, square road deck. As the wind hit it, miniature whirlwinds formed at the corners, which started the twisting. The twist turned the deck towards the wind, which produced more twist, and finally, disaster. The answer? Get rid of the square corners.
If you add these airfoils, the wind will move smoothly around the bridge section, just like you'll experience on the wing of an aircraft. In the case of the Great Bell Bridge, we tested a number of different shapes to find out which would give the most stable bridge, and it turned out it would remain stable to a wind speed which is more than twice of what have ever been measured in the Great Belt area.
So as you can see, the bridge didn't do too well, and it was one question I had was, well, what was giving it that energy to twist and turn like that? And the answer to that is wind. And wind, if you've noticed in a flag, it ripples back and forth. If you notice how it can move things, wind has a lot of energy into it. In fact, that's what we've gone to now with many of our electricity producing. It's using wind. So, but the problem with that was the wind really kind of accentuated the design flaws in this bridge structure. And so our focus is going to become how are engineering challenges solved. People knew the bridge had a problem to begin with, and engineers were working on it, but they didn't get it solved in time. So what's the process, what's the engineering challenges, and how do we solve those is the focus of this lesson. And it all relates to how we relate to energy as a whole. At this time, what I want you to do is to go pause the video, go back and find that notebook sheet number 5, How to Meet an Engineering Challenge. Go ahead and download that into Notability. You're going to be working with it. And it lists out some of the procedures that engineers go through in designing and the steps that they go through that they have to think about when they're coming up with an engineering challenge. So take a minute, stop the video, go and find that page and download it into Notability so we can use it. I'll wait. Awesome. Now that you've got that, we're going to continue on and look at how, yes, what steps there are to have good engineering practices. All right, once you've got that worksheet, you've got 6 different steps that need to be worked through and put into order, a numerical order of 1 through 6 in terms of which will happen first, which would be second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth as you go through in engineering, trying to solve an engineering practice. Some of the terms that you may want to look at or be familiar with that may not make any sense or those kinds of things are listed here on this slide. The first one talks about a prototype. A prototype is basically a model. Now you can have a physical model. Back in the day they used to make airplanes and little models of airplanes or little models of cars. They'd make them out of clay, or they make them out of balsa wood, or make them smaller versions of what would the real thing be to test them out. So that way you're not building a huge construction. You're building it out of clay. You can manipulate it. You can work with it. But it is a prototype. It is basically a model of that new design. So that's the first one, or one of them. Another one is brainstorming. Some of you you've heard the term brainstorm before. A group of people freely sharing creative ideas. And the key word is creative. Come up with something out of the box. So brainstorm, how can we solve this problem? What are some possible ways that we can solve this problem? Number 3, this was a big one in the bridge building design of the Tacomas, was constraints. They are factors that limit what can be done. Is it time? Is it energy? Is it resources? Is it money? What are the factors that will prevent you from getting anything done? One of the things that they talked about in the video was, this was 1930, 37, 38, 39. That's in the depths of the U.S. Depression back in the day. And one of their big things was, where are we going to find the money? Finding the money. And that is a huge constraint on many things in terms of things getting done. We just don't have the money for it. Don't have the time, don't have the energy, don't have the ideas. So those are things. And finally, the 4th one, you'd be surprised what may be out there already. Research. Looking for work that may already have been done or ideas that you think about the problem. Research. Look out there. See what's already been done. The wheel has probably already been invented. You don't have to reinvent the wheel again. There may be a better mousetrap out there. Maybe something else than ideas. You would do research on whatever those ideas are, see what's already been done, and then build on those or change those or tweak them or see what mistakes were already made from that. So what I want you to do is take that worksheet, excuse me, and go through and put in order 1 through 6, starting with the first one being 1, which of those steps would come first, which would come second, which one would come third, etc. All right, once you put those 6 in a row, or in the order that you think, keep in mind it is a cycle. It's not necessarily a straight line or in a straight sequence. So when this asks the question, do the steps in the engineering process go in a straight sequence from beginning to end? The answer to that is no. Why or why not? Simply because you are seeing every step of the way, you are changing what your practice might be, what your goal might be, what your design might be, what worked and what didn't work. Changes will happen. And so as a result, if you get started on a project and realize after step 1 this ain't going to work, or what's going to happen next, then you got to go back and look at your ideas again. And that's what they had to do with this bridge. They had one idea come up. Their constraints were put in place because of money, so they changed their design because of that and built something different. The problem was that what they built different didn't have time to test it, didn't have time to put into look at the model, the prototypes, and it kind of threw it up there and just said, we will figure it out as we go. And that's not good design, that's not good engineering practices, and that's not very safe. If you're on the bridge itself, like that one car was, that would be very terrifying and scary. And as a result, overall, the bridge failed, and they had to move on and rebuild it. So, are they always in a straight line? No, they're not always in a straight line. Changes will happen which will cause you to redo or have to reimagine or move the direction differently. Here's a little chart to help you show this example. Here's a design process kind of, I don't know, map, so to speak, the cycles that go on with it. And notice how all the arrows are going around and round or pointing to different directions and starting back at the top again and everything else that goes with it. You start out, you identify and research the problem. What is it? What is the problem we're trying to fix? With the bridge, it was this swaying, this fluttering, this back and forth motion of why is it doing that in just a regular wind breeze, not really even that strong. Well, then you brainstorm ideas. You come up with possible ideas. You come up, well, how can we do this? How can we do this? How can we do this? All that kinds of stuff. Then that goes into, so from your identifying into brainstorming, then into design and your redesigns. Then we build it, and that's where the prototype probably comes in, the prototype. And then you will test it, and test it like in a wind tunnel or under a simulation standpoint to be able to go to the tests. Then you're going to evaluate, well, what did those tests show us? What was going on? Was there good? Was there bad? And then from that, you can maybe redesign it again. Failure will happen more times than success. Know that. Failure will happen more times than success, but it's what you do with that failure. Can I make adjustments? Can I make changes? Can I do something different that then it won't lead to failure? And that's what engineers do all the time. Engineers realize life is destined to fail, so let's try and solve it before it gets into place. And so as a result, some of those from the evaluation, you see it goes back over here. Well, how can we fix that? How can we fix that? And those solutions might go to all sorts of different places in that cycle. So it's an ongoing cycle, and in fact, they don't have the same things. They'll take older versions of something and make them better based on new technology, based on new materials, based on new ways of doing things. And the other thing that always comes into play is the money that's involved, unfortunately. All right, once you've done, you probably go back and want to change some of your answers on your Notability worksheet. If you would, go ahead and make those changes and then upload that, submit that, save it to your Google Drive. See a lot of screenshots. Please save it to your Google Drive, save it in that way, and then go and upload it into Canvas that way, if you would. Then I want you to find your the eBooks app on FOSS, the FOSS eBooks app on yours. And you probably, I don't know if we've done this or not, have to download the Waves unit or the Waves textbook. So get that downloaded. And then I'd like you to read and or have read to you the Tacoma Narrows disaster that you'll find on page 12 of this Waves book, okay? So go to the FOSS eBooks app, download the Waves section if you haven't done so already, find page 12, and then have it read to you, kind of what it does here. On November 7, 1940, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge began to twist uncontrollably. As the wind blew, the steel and concrete bridge twisted in the air. As onlookers watched in shock, the bridge finally collapsed into the water below. And it goes into a little bit more details with that. So take a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, go back over and read out the Tacoma Narrows Bridge disaster, and I'll go over some more details as well. And then come back when you're done. The last couple things I want you to do is to spend a few minutes reviewing the vocabulary. Remember those 4 different terms that we looked at: brainstorm, constraint, prototype, and research. If you would add those to your vocabulary in your Notability vocabulary, vocab, add those in there. Remember, brainstorming is generating ideas. Constraints are limiting factors, keep preventing it. Prototype is a model. And research is what's been already done out there or your thoughts on the ideas. So add those to your Notability vocab list so that you can study those and use those for upcoming tests. And finally, go back to our focus question again. How do we solve engineering challenges, the problems of it? Yes, the first thing is you identify the problem. You identify any of the problem. You do some research or ask some questions or imagine or envision a solution. Then you come up with a decision of trying one and designing one, and then test and then build a prototype, and then finally testing it and see how you evaluate those. So that is our engineering challenges. That's what you saw with the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, and that's what engineers have to face all the time. And it all has to do and interrelated to the energy that various structures have to deal with. Thank you, everybody. Make sure that you uploaded that assignment into Canvas, and we will see you next time.